Hello and welcome to my video on the 15 settings I changed straight away on the Nikon ZF. Some of the settings I've suggested here are the same as the ones I posted on my Nikon Z8 settings video last year because these cameras are very similar in their functionality, but there are also some big differences. So come on, let's get into it and I'll walk you through it. So before we start, I should say these are my personal choices. And while you may not agree with every single one of them, I'm sure you will seriously benefit from a lot of them. The first setting I changed was to switch over from RAW to JPEG. RAW just gives you far more detail in your photograph and tons of tolerance for editing your image afterwards.
So to change over to RAW, we go to the camera icon up in the top left hand corner, then we press the arrow over to the right and we move down along until we find image quality. You can see it's set to fine here now. We press OK. Then we have a load of different options here from RAW, RAW and JPEG, but the one we want here is RAW because it's going to give you the most detail. Just click on OK to set that. Now we have RAW recording quality settings, so if I click OK here, we go into lossless compression, high efficiency star or high efficiency. Lossless compression is the one I'm going to go for because it's going to give you a small little bit more detail. There's nothing in it practically, but it's going to give you more compatibility with third-party software.
Setting 2 then is setting the second card to backup. This is incredibly important for anyone shooting professionally or just for peace of mind.
So we need to go all the way up to the top here again to the photo shooting menu or the camera icon, press the arrow over to the right. Then we move down to this primary slot selection, which is SD, which is correct. The secondary slot selection, then we want to change that from overflow to backup. So it's going to back up the photographs from the SD card also onto the micro SD card.
For people that are worried about the micro SD card, which is the second card on the ZF, slowing down the camera, don't worry about that at all because look at this now. I'm going to show you how well the micro SD card can cope with high frames per second burst mode. So I have both an SD card and a micro SD card installed in the camera. On the bottom right hand corner you can see R043 in brackets. That's saying there's 43 shots remaining in the buffer. So if I hold down the shutter button now, it's firing off and you can see that R number is dropping lower and lower and lower, and there we go. So that's how long it took for the buffer to fill. Now, since I've stopped taking the photograph, the green light is on here, which means it's recording those images to both cards. So it's emptying out the buffer slowly. So I'll tell you when that stops, and that should give you an idea then is how long it takes for the buffer to fill and for the buffer to empty. And give me 2 seconds.
So in total, it took 20 seconds for the buffer to write completely over onto the micro SD card.
Then again, if you're going to be sitting on the shutter button for that long, you probably don't need to buy the Nikon ZF. You need something along the lines of the Nikon Z8 or the Z9. Now, speaking of the micro SD card, it's one of the issues, getting the micro SD card out of the slot, because it's a small bit of a pain, especially if you put a grip on the camera itself. But what I found is incredibly handy is, or the way I do it is, when I'm finished my shoot, I'll go home, I'll take the SD card, the full-size SD card out, I'll back it up on my computer and a few different places. I have a NAS drive and back it up in the cloud too as well. I'll then reformat the micro SD card so I actually never need to take it out of the camera itself. So that's a little tip for you. Setting 3 then is a setting you will absolutely love if you shoot AFC, because you will notice the focus box doesn't light up green when the focus lock is confirmed. Let me show you what I mean here now.
So here I am in AFC and spot focus, and when I press the shutter button there now, taking photographs, the red box over the eye is not actually turning green.
Because when you shoot in AFC, as default on the camera, when you're actually focused and when the focus lock is on, the red box for the AF doesn't actually show up as being green, it still shows up as red, so you have no visible confirmation. Now, if you change setting A10, which I'm going to show you in a second, what that's basically going to do is it's going to go green when focus lock has been confirmed. So you have a visible sign on screen saying that your focus is locked on. Now in AFS, it does as you can quite clearly see here too as well.
So now I'm in AFS, and when I press the shutter button halfway down, you could quite clearly see that red box goes green for focus lock. So I go to the pencil icon, then we go over to focus option A, then we move down to A10, which is focus point display, and here we have AFC in focus display is switched off. If I press the OK button, it switches it on. It's switched off as default, and now when I change over to AFC here now, you can see the box is red there now, and when I press the shutter button, it now goes green, and it now gives us that focus lock confirmation.
Setting 4 then is the focus orientation point, or setting A5. This means you have two different focus points depending on the orientation of the camera. So let's say you're shooting a landscape, the focus point will be on a specific point in the screen, but then when you pop into portrait, that orientation or that focus point, because you've changed orientation, can be changed to a secondary position. And when I pop back to landscape, then again, it remembers the landscape focus point.
So you can see the focus point here. As I change from landscape to portrait and back to landscape again, the focus point does not change. So I go to the pencil icon, I press OK. I go to A for focus then. A5 is store points by orientation. You can see it's switched off here now. If I press the OK button, we go into the menu. I want to select focus point. You can also change the AF area mode if you want. So again, you can see my focus point here in landscape mode. And if I change it to portrait mode here now and move that focus point around towards the top of the frame, let's say, and then when I change the camera back into landscape mode, it's going to go back to the landscape default mode. So when I chop and change from landscape to portrait, you can see that focus point is moving now.
Setting number 5 then is to keep the focus lock. So in other words, if you shoot landscapes or commercial work, then this is a nice feature to have switched on. It basically means once you set your camera's focus, and if the camera is switched off, and if it's switched back on long again, it remembers the focus point, so the focus won't go to infinity absolutely every single time. So to show you what I mean by storing the focus position, I'm going to focus here now on Dobby's eye. So that's focused. I'm going to switch off the camera now, switching the camera back on along there now again, and it's no longer locked on Dobby's eye. So what we need to do is we need to go down to the wrench icon here now. And once we go in here, we can move down along past all these, and we need to find save focus position. There it is. And we need to switch that on, and that's it, that's done. It's going to remember now the focus position every single time you switch the camera on and off, so it's not going to reset to infinity. Setting 6 then is back button focus. And there's actually two parts to this. The first thing is we need to set the back button focus to the AEL lock button on the back, and then we need to disconnect focusing from the shutter button itself. So in other words, the shutter button is only going to be there to actually take your photograph. Whereas when you focus, when you want to focus, just press the AEL lock button on the back and it's going to automatically focus for you. So I'm going to show you how you do that now.
So first we need to go to the pencil icon, then we need to select A for focus. Then we go down to point A6, which is AF activation. We want AF on only, and don't forget to press the OK button to store these settings. The second part then is to go down to option F for controls, and we need to select F2 custom controls for shooting. So what we need to do here now is we need to find our AF or AEL lock button, and we press, I have it there, press OK, and then we can change it from AEL lock up to AF on, which is going to initiate back button focus for the AEL lock button then. Now when I press the AEL lock button, the lens will focus and it won't focus with the shutter button.
Setting 7 then is setting up the focus wraparound option. That's in option A9. This is handy as it saves time positioning the focus point. If you're on one side of the screen, you don't need to go all the way back over to the other side to set the focus point on the other side.
So here we have the red focus point, and as you can see I can move it up the screen, but it won't go from the top of the screen to the bottom. I have to physically move it up and down, and the same going from the left to the right. You can't go from one side to the other. To change that, we go to the pencil icon, then we move over along, we select focus A, and then A9 focus wraparound. You can see it's switched off here now. But if I press the OK button, it switches it on. So now when I hold down the arrow to the right, it'll continue turning to the right. Or when I press the arrow up, it'll keep going up along. This makes it an awful lot faster and quicker to select focus points on the frame.
So setting number 8 then for the Nikon Z8 is actually setting the red little record button up on top here for my ISO. That's only in photo mode. When you go to video mode, it still works for record. So that'll only work when you're in photo mode.
So we go down to the pencil icon, then we select F for controls, and then we select F2 for custom controls for shooting. Inside here then, we have a number of different controls we can set. The one we're looking for here is the record button, which is this one. Once I click on OK, this will open out the options that we can set it to. As you can see here now, there's various different options for setting or assigning to this button. But the one we're looking for here is ISO. So I'm going to keep going down along here until I hit the ISO, and there it is. So I just press OK, and that's it, we're done.
So what I'll do is, I'll actually press this button, then it activates the ISO mode in my camera, and the rear thumb wheel will change the ISO value, so I can go ISO 100, 200, 400, 800, whatever I want. And then I can switch on and off the auto ISO with the thumb wheel on the front then. So I can quickly go from auto ISO on and auto ISO off, or vary the ISO manually on the back myself. I find that incredibly handy because obviously you get muscle memory from using the likes of Nikon Z8 and the Z7 II, having the ISO button up on top. So I absolutely love that, and I highly recommend you do it. So setting number 9 on the Nikon ZF is actually to set my maximum auto ISO, and that's something I highly recommend you do because your ISO could go way up and you just might not be comfortable with the noise it creates. For me personally on the Nikon ZF, I find ISO 3200 is something I am very, very happy with. Once it goes above that, ISO 6400 is also quite good, but you do notice a good bit more noise, and from there up along it obviously gets noisier. Now, everyone's tolerance for noise is completely different, and that's why I recommend you try it and see what you're happy with. Me personally, I'm incredibly picky and incredibly fussy when it comes to noise, and obviously my clients are then too as well. So just be aware of that. So auto ISO is incredibly handy, and make sure to set your maximum.
So we go up here to the photo shooting menu, then we move down along until we get to ISO sensitivity settings. And you can see here auto ISO sensitivity control is off, and if I switch it on now, it's going to give you your maximum sensitivity, which is at 64,000 ISO now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move up along to the maximum sensitivity I want my ISO at. Whether it's ISO 3200 or ISO 6400, whatever you want to set it to. And just press OK, and that's it, it's set. Now the beauty of this is I can always manually override this in manual ISO then.
Setting number 10 then on the Nikon ZF is adjusting the front FN button, and what I do with that is I have this now set to focus mode. As it stands, when it comes out of the box, it's set for white balance. But for me, again, muscle memory, I'm used to having it there on my Z7 Mark II and my Z8. I'll just press and hold this down with one of my fingers, and then I can adjust from manual to AFS to AFC, and then I can adjust the focus modes then too as well with the front thumb wheel. So you can adjust the focus really, really quickly then by having that FN set to focus. Again, you can set it to something else if you prefer.
In the menu now, we move down to the pencil icon, then we move across to F for controls. Then we go to custom controls in shooting, F2, and the top left hand option here is the FN button. So we just press the OK button now to open out the options that we can assign to that, and we move up and down then until we find our focus mode, AF area mode here, and we press OK then again to store that in place.
Setting number 11 then on the Nikon ZF was to set the metering mode to what suits me. I use spot focus and spot metering the vast majority of the time, so that's what I have mine set to. I have it set to spot metering. So I'm going to show you how to do that now.
So we go up here to the camera icon or the photo shooting menu, and then we move down along here until we get to metering, and it should be coming up there, and there we have it. Now we have a few different options here. We have matrix metering, center weighted metering, spot metering, and highlight weighted metering. Spot metering is the one I personally prefer and always go for. So I'm just going to highlight that and press the OK button.
Setting number 12 then is to change the standby timer option. This is option C3. I have it set to 5 minutes now at the moment while I'm using the ZF. I find 30 seconds is just a bit too short. The camera falls asleep and you have to press a button to wake it up. I've it set to 5 minutes because the battery time is actually long enough in this camera, and 5 minutes I have found personally suits me best.
So we move down to the pencil icon, Then we move to option C, timers AE lock, and then we select C3, which is power off delay. Now, as you can see, there's a few different options here, from the playback sleep time, menu sleep time, picture review sleep time, but it's the standby timer here is set to 30 seconds, and that's the one I want to change. So I press OK, and it's on 30 seconds, but I'm going to move down here to 5 minutes and press OK.
Setting 13 is to set up the extended shutter speeds via setting D6. This basically means you can do longer exposures than 30 seconds in camera. In fact, it goes all the way up to 15 minutes. Now, this is very handy and something I've had set up in the Z7 Mark II and the Z8 II as well. It's really cool if you want to do a 1 minute, 2 minute, or 4 minute exposure or 90-second exposure. Anything along those lines, you can actually set it in camera, press the shutter button, walk away from it, and it's going to do it all in camera itself. So let's show you how we change that now. So as you can see here now, when I bring my shutter speed down, I can only go as far as 30 seconds. After that, it goes into bulb mode. But if I go into the menu, and if I go to the pencil icon and press select, go to option D, which is shooting display, and then D6, which is extended shutter speeds. That's off now, but if I press the OK to select that to switch it on, and if I press my menu and go back out here now along again, so I can go 25, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. Now it's at 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 120, 180, 240, and we can keep going. So you can see this is giving us far more options for long exposures where you don't need separate timers or remote controls. So that is very, very handy. Setting 14 then is to set up the eye menu on the back of the camera for your most used settings. And yes, this might seem fairly straightforward, but it is very handy. If there are settings you use on a very regular basis, you can just press the eye menu button here and it's going to bring them up on screen and you can gain access to them very, very quickly rather than having to go through the menu itself. So I'm going to show you how you do that now. So go to the pencil icon, press OK. In controls, press OK, and option F1 is customize the eye menu. So you can go over whichever option you want here. Let's say if I want to change my ISO sensitivity setting to something else, I can just press OK when it's on ISO, and I can change that to whatever I want. I can change it to image quality as such, and that's it. It's done. And when I go back to photo mode and just quickly press my I button, you can actually see there now I can quickly adjust whichever one I want here. Setting 15 is to set the lens FN button to switch on and off. Starlight mode. I love having Starlight mode enabled when shooting in very dark scenes, as you can see everything clearly and it's a lot easier to compose your shots correctly then too. So the lens FN button, you have it on this lens here, 70-200 f2.8, and you have it in a lot of the S-series lenses too as well. So you just press that and it'll switch on Starlight mode, and press it again and it'll switch it off. So I'll show you how to switch that on there now. We go down to the pencil icon. We go to F for controls again, and we go down to option F2, which is custom controls. And here then we have different options. As we did earlier, we changed the front FN button and we changed the record button too as well. But what we want to do is change the lens FN button here now for Starlight. So if I select OK, and what we do is we just move up and down until we find the Starlight, which should be showing up. I'm going to go straight past it here now. I thought it was here. There we are. So, and if I press OK now, so what this is going to do, that's set in there now. So if we're shooting with flash now, and we're shooting in a poorly lit scene, I can't really compose my photograph. My camera can focus there, obviously. You can see it's focusing there now on Dobby, but I can't actually see it. Whereas if I press my lens FN button, it brings into Starlight mode. So what it's going to do is it's going to give you the ability of being able to see and being able to compose your photograph an awful lot easier. Now, the only disadvantage of Starlight mode is you don't know how the exposure is going to balance out. But then again, you generally be shooting this when you're shooting with flash, which you can't see anyway. So I could then focus very easily, get my composition right, and fire off my shots. I hope those 15 settings really helped you. I have a few more videos coming soon on the Nikon ZF and several lenses from Nikon also. So make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell too. So see you out there, or see you in the next video, everyone.